If you want to watch that video, that's called the 10 Commandments of Bitcoin, I think. And I'm going to leave a link to it in the show notes here. You can watch the video for it. I might have to cut it from the clip after, just in case there's any copyright issues with it. I don't want a whole bunch of warnings on this channel. But I'm going to put the link if you want to watch it on your own after. I don't know why these comments aren't showing up over on Zap.stream. Anyway, so this is the 10 rules, the 10 commandments of Bitcoin. Number 1, never say, never tell how much Bitcoin you have to anybody. Nobody. Not your kids. Possibly the only one here, the only exception here would be your spouse. If you're, depending on your relationship, depending on if you're married or whatever, I would still be careful with just exactly, especially if you had Bitcoin before they became your spouse, I would be careful with it. I'm not telling you what to do. I'm just saying for the most part, the one exception would be your spouse. But for everybody else, your kids, your parents, your best friends, anybody, nobody needs to know how much Bitcoin you have. And for better results, don't even yourself know how much Bitcoin you have, because if you don't even know how much Bitcoin you have, if you've had 12 beers and you're having a conversation, you're much less likely to tell somebody how much you have if you don't even know yourself. Just focus on getting as much as possible. That's it. So that's number 1. That's my number 1 rule, is the number 1 rule on this as well. Never tell anybody how much Bitcoin you have. Number 2 there was DCA, dollar cost average into Bitcoin. And we talked about this last week on the show, our new strategy for buying Bitcoin. And that strategy was, when you're first getting into Bitcoin, take whatever you have. If you got $2,000, $5,000, whatever's free cash flow, dump it into Bitcoin, one buy, lump sum. Just get in there. From there, spend a year or two DCAing, which means dollar cost average. And the one thing you have to keep in mind here is, if you're new to Bitcoin, you have to pay attention to your UTXOs. You can always deal with it afterwards, but I would rather just be proactive with it and really pay attention to how much your UTXO sizes are. And there's no mention of UTXOs in here because I think that's a little bit advanced for a lot of people, but just pay attention to it. And if you're new to Bitcoin and you've never heard of UTXOs before, do a little bit of your own research, figure out what it is, and figure out how to best plan for that. And just quickly, I guess, just in case there are some new Bitcoiners in here, with the DCA, basically what you're doing there is you're buying every week, every month, whatever that is. And every time you move it from an exchange into your Bitcoin cold storage, that's going to be 1 UTXO. So every week, if you have a new UTXO, that's going to be a nightmare when you're trying to spend those Bitcoin in the future. Because how the Bitcoin network works, how the fee structure works, is that every Bitcoin transaction is just a bunch of data. And the more UTXOs you have within that data, the higher fee you pay. So let's say you do a year. Every month you put away, you buy Bitcoin, you send it to your cold storage. So every month you'd have 12 UTXOs. That's 12 pieces of data. Because of the Bitcoin blockchain, how it works is there's only so much space available in each block. And every transaction takes up space in a block. And so the more data you have, the more UTXOs, the more times you've sent Bitcoin from your exchange to your cold storage, the more data is within that transaction. So the higher fee you're going to pay. There's a whole bunch of analogies for it. I don't really like any of them, honestly. I think it's just very, if you understand it, it's very easy to figure out, just pay attention to it. But that's DCA. So from there, after a year or two of DCA, what I would do, and what I've started to do instead of DCAing now, is I'm just going to start accumulating some cash. And once it drops, just wait for bad news. That's all you got to do. There's going to be an exchange that goes down. There's going to be a country selling their Bitcoin, dumping it. There's going to be something happens where Bitcoin just crashes. And that's when you buy. You use the money that you have, you buy it. And if you're not comfortable doing that, then just DCA. That's rule number 2. Number 3 is not your keys, not your cheese, which I like to. I like that saying. Which means that if you're not holding your Bitcoin on cold storage, it doesn't actually belong to you. And that could be on an exchange if you're holding it on ShakePay, if you're holding it on Coinbase, whatever that is. You don't have the actual ownership of that. Anything could happen with it. You don't hold that until you put it in your cold storage. And that applies to Lightning too. Layer 2, if you got Bitcoin on your wallet of Satoshi in a mini bits wallet, anything really, it doesn't actually belong to you until you move it into cold storage, and you have the key to that cold storage. So I think most people know that, but it is important. Number 4 is hodl through 2 halvings. My advice is hodl through at least 1 halving and then reevaluate. But and the reason for that is because if you look historically at that fucking alarm. I don't know. It just something with the internet out here. It's kind of sketchy. So it trips that once in a while, but it's annoying. Where was I there? Hodl through 2 halvings. So my advice is to hodl through at least 1 halving, which is 1 4-year Bitcoin cycle. If you buy it, you hold it for 4 years, you're going to be in a better spot than you were, historically speaking. If you bought Bitcoin at any time and waited 4 years with a Bitcoin, your purchasing power has gone up. The value of your Bitcoin has gone up. 4 years. Don't buy it and try to cash it out in a month or a year. Just be very patient. Get through at least 1 cycle. This says 2, but I would say hodl through at least 1 halving cycle. Number 5 is protect your seed. So this is something we spend a lot of time here talking about on the show because it is the most important part of Bitcoin. Bitcoin's very easy to buy, but it's hard to protect. So you have to invest some time, invest some money in a device, in a setup, in a security setup that when you go to sleep at night, you know that no matter what happens, your Bitcoin's going to be there in the morning. That could be fire, that could be break-in, that could be anything. You want to be as prepared as possible for anything to happen. Protect your seed at all costs. Number 6 is no leverage. And I think that there's a responsible amount of debt that you can be taking on at this time. Responsible amount of debt to buy Bitcoin. That could be through a small line of credit. That could be through, I wouldn't recommend credit card debt because the rates on there are just insane and that'll compound quicker than you can keep up with. But if you can find a low rate debt, line of credit, whatever it is, refinancing your mortgage to buy Bitcoin, I have no issues with that. Because you have to look at the 2 sides of it. You're going to be paying about 5, 6, 7, 8% every year on that debt. But historically, Bitcoin averages about 150% of return every year. So if you have the ability to wait it out, then it makes sense. That's the responsible part of it. Don't do it don't stretch yourself thin, don't stress yourself out, and don't play the long and the short games. That's how people get wrecked in Bitcoin. Just buy it. If you need to, if you have the ability to get some cheap debt, then I see no issues with that. But yeah, for the most part, I would say no leverage. But Bitcoin's a beautiful thing because you actually own it. Everything else has a debt attached to it. Whether it's a house, it's attached to debt. Whether it's a car, most people's cars are attached to debt. Bitcoin is something that you can own without any third-party risk there. So take advantage of that. Just forget about the leverage, forget about the debt, for the most part. Number 7, keep your ego and Bitcoin separate. This really ties into number 1 because it would be your ego that wants to tell people how much Bitcoin you have. But you have to just be there is, Odell's famous saying of stay humble and stack sats is very accurate. And he says it's a reminder to himself because it is very easy if you've ever been through a Bitcoin cycle or a crypto bull run, when prices are running up, you feel like you're invincible and you're, bulletproof. You're buying dumb shit. You're telling everybody about it. You're doing things you shouldn't do because your ego is there. So you have to keep that separate. If you're somebody who wants to do it quietly, even better. But for the most part, don't tell anybody how much Bitcoin you have. Keep your 95% of your Bitcoin stacked forever. If you have to spend some to get rid of some stress in your life, then that's fine. But keep your 95% of your stack forever and just forget about it. Which also ties into number 10 as well, but we'll stick with number 8 here, which is proof of work is the new standard in life. Not just for our monetary, the proof of work protocol, which is within Bitcoin, but in life. We're not going to have the ability to just go to school, get a job, do that job very mediocrely and make a good living. Those days are gone. If you want to get ahead in life now, you're actually going to have to provide real value to people. You're going to have to be consistent. You're going to have to find an audience. You're going to have to do whatever it takes to add value to people's lives. That's the only way that people are going to give you Bitcoin. You can continue making fiat for the next couple of years until robots replace you. But if you want to actually earn real wealth and real money, you're going to have to add value, the proof of work there. It's an important one. Number 9 is no KYC. You can use places like BISC, HODL. You can join a Bitcoin community. We've done some buying and selling in our Living in the Future community. Find a way to get no KYC sats, earning Bitcoin, selling things for Bitcoin. There's a bunch of ways you can do it. I wouldn't obsess over it, as I say all the time. I don't think if no KYC is required for Bitcoin, then Bitcoin's failed. But still a good idea just to protect your privacy, to guarantee that nobody's going to know you have Bitcoin in the future. Consider stacking some non-KYC sats. Number 10. Oh, I got to sneeze. That's the worst. That's like the worst. Blue balls for your nose. I hate when you have to sneeze and you don't. Number 10 here is hodling is simple, but not easy. So this ties in, like I said, to your ego. It's simple. You just buy Bitcoin, you protect it, and you don't do anything with it. It's simple. The process itself is very simple, but it's not easy and it's going to get harder as we go here, because what's going to happen? What's going to happen here is that Bitcoin is going to continue to increase in value. Your purchasing power is going to continue to go up. The fiat price of Bitcoin is going to continue to go up. And there's only so much Bitcoin. There's a very small percentage of people who own Bitcoin. There's a very, very, very small percentage of companies who own Bitcoin and countries. But over time, everybody's going to want some Bitcoin. And you have to understand the fact that there's only so much Bitcoin available. So it's not going to be the price of these people's concerns. The price is going to be completely irrelevant because they have the ability, they have so much capital. They have so much capital and the ability to generate more capital that they're not going to care about the price. They're just going to care about accumulating it. They're going to be wanting Bitcoin because there's only so much of it. So what they're going to do is they're going to drive up the prices. They're going to shoot up the price of Bitcoin to say $500,000, $1 million, $5 million. And when that happens, a lot of Bitcoiners who are here now are going to be very tempted to sell their Bitcoin. And that's going to go directly into the BlackRock vacuum. That's what they're going to do. They're going to tempt people to sell their Bitcoin. So it's simple. The process itself is very simple. You buy it, you hold on to it forever. But it's not easy to do. You're going to have to very much manage your emotions, the temptation that they're going to give you to sell your Bitcoin. You have to just get through that. And you have to be prepared for it. You have to know that it's coming, because it is. So that's what I got for you today.